My name is Danny Sullivan, and I install security systems for a living. Ironic, considering I'm about to tear down the most secure lie my wife ever built. I'm bringing Evan to the Christmas party, Carla announced over her morning coffee, not even looking up from her phone. Her manicured fingers scrolled through emails like she was conducting an orchestra of corporate bullshit. Evan, her ex-boyfriend from college, the hedge fund prince who dumped her for a socialite named Tina, then somehow wormed his way back into her life as a consulting partner at Morrison & Associates, the PR firm where my wife had clawed her way to senior account executive. "That's nice, honey," I said, sipping my gas station coffee while she nursed her $15 artisanal blend. I already invited his wife. The phone slipped from her fingers. For exactly 3 seconds, Carla's perfectly composed mask cracked, revealing something raw and panicked underneath. Then she laughed, that practiced professional sound she used on difficult clients. "Danny, that's not appropriate. Tina and I don't really know each other. Perfect time to get acquainted." I stood up, grabbed my tool bag, and kissed her forehead. Her skin felt cold. Trust is a team sport, right? That's what you always say. I'd grown up in the Riverside district, back when it was still honest about being a shithole instead of calling itself emerging. My old man worked construction until his back gave out, and my mother cleaned office buildings downtown, including Morrison & Associates, which is how I met Carla in the first place. She was working late, I was fixing a faulty motion sensor, and somehow her ambition and my blue-collar charm seemed to fit together like puzzle pieces. That was 8 years ago. Now I lived in her world of dinner parties and networking events, wearing uncomfortable suits and nodding along while her friends discussed wine pairings and property values. I'd become her project, the rough diamond she'd polished just enough to be presentable, but I still knew how to read people, and Carla had been lying to me for months. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The late nights preparing presentations, the hushed phone calls that ended when I walked into the room, the way she'd started wearing perfume to work, not the light, professional scent she used to prefer, but something heavier, more intimate, something that said she had someone to impress. 3 weeks ago, I'd found her old phone in her purse while looking for gum. The screen was cracked, probably why she'd replaced it, but it still worked, and it still had her messages. "Can't wait to taste you again. Room 412, Marriott downtown. I'll be there by 7. Danny suspects something. We need to be more careful." All from Evan, all recent, all evidence that my wife was involved with her ex-boyfriend while I was setting up security cameras in other people's homes, safeguarding their property from thieves. I could have confronted her immediately. Could have screamed, thrown things, demanded explanations, but I'd learned something important growing up in Riverside. Revenge is a dish best served with a side of public humiliation. So I called Tina Morrison. Yes, she'd kept her maiden name, probably because Morrison carried more social weight than whatever hedge fund royalty surname Evan had given her. I found her number through the company directory. Apparently she served on some charity board that Morrison & Associates handled. "Mrs. Morrison? This is Danny Sullivan, Carla's husband. I wanted to invite you to our company Christmas party next Friday. I thought it would be nice for you and Evan to attend together." There was a long pause. "I'm sorry, who did you say this was?" "Danny Sullivan. My wife works with your husband on the Henderson account." Another pause, longer this time. "Mr. Sullivan, I think there might be some confusion. Evan and we're having some difficulties right now. I wasn't aware he was working closely with anyone named Carla." "Perfect. She didn't know about the affair, but she suspected something, and I could work with that." "Oh, I'm so sorry. I just thought..." "Well, Carla mentioned how much she enjoyed collaborating with Evan, and I assumed you'd want to see his work environment, but if it's not a good time..." "Actually," Tina said, her voice sharpening with interest, "I think I would like to see his work environment. What time should I be there?" The Morrison & Associates Christmas party was held at the Riverside Country Club, because of course it was, in the one part of my old neighborhood that had been gentrified beyond recognition. The ballroom was all crystal chandeliers and gold trim, filled with people who measured their worth in stock options and vacation homes. I wore my best suit, the one Carla had picked out for me last year, navy blue with a subtle pinstripe that she said made me look distinguished. She wore a red dress that probably cost more than my monthly salary, her dark hair swept up to show off the diamond earrings I'd given her for our anniversary. "You look beautiful," I told her as we walked in, and meant it. Carla had always been stunning. Sharp cheekbones, intelligent green eyes, the kind of smile that could convince you to buy whatever she was selling. It's what made her so good at her job, and apparently so good at lying to me. Thank you, baby. She squeezed my arm, playing the loving wife. Now remember, be nice to everyone. Mr. Morrison is here tonight, and I'm hoping to discuss that promotion. Mr. Morrison, no relation to Tina, just another coincidence in a city full of them, was the founding partner, a silver-haired shark who'd built his empire on the principle that perception mattered more than truth. He was holding court near the bar, surrounded by junior executives laughing too hard at his mediocre jokes. There's Evan, Carla said, and I followed her gaze to see him standing by the windows, looking like he'd stepped out of a men's fashion magazine, tall, lean, perfect hair, the kind of effortless confidence that came from never having to worry about money. He was talking to Sarah Chen, one of Carla's colleagues, but his eyes found my wife immediately. The smile they shared lasted exactly 2 seconds too long. Should we go say hello? I suggested. Of course. Carla's voice was steady, but I felt her grip tighten on my arm. We made our way across the room, stopping to exchange pleasantries with various coworkers. I played my part, the supportive husband, proud of his successful wife, just blue-collar enough to be charming without being threatening. I'd gotten good at this role over the years. Evan. Carla's voice carried just the right note of professional friendliness. I'd like you to meet my husband, Danny. Danny, this is Evan Morrison, our consulting partner on the Henderson account. Evan extended his hand, and I shook it, making sure my grip was firm enough to make a point. Nice to meet you, Evan. Carla's told me so much about your collaboration. All good things, I hope. His smile was perfect. White teeth, just the right amount of warmth. But his eyes were nervous, darting between Carla and me like he was trying to solve a puzzle. Oh, absolutely. She says you two work very well together. Very closely. Carla's laugh was a little too bright. Danny, you're embarrassing me. Sorry, honey. I'm just proud of how hard you've been working. All those late nights, weekend meetings. I let the words hang in the air, watching Evan's face carefully. I barely see her anymore. Well, the Henderson account is very demanding, Evan said, recovering his composure. We've had to put in extra hours to meet their expectations. I bet you have. The conversation continued for a few more minutes, all surface pleasantries and professional small talk. But underneath, I could feel the tension building. Evan kept glancing toward the entrance, probably wondering where his wife was. Carla was doing her best to act normal, but I could see the strain in her smile. And then, right on cue, Tina Morrison walked into the ballroom. She was everything Carla wasn't, blonde where my wife was brunette, soft where Carla was sharp, old money elegant in a way that couldn't be bought or learned. She wore a simple black dress that probably cost more than my car, and she moved through the room like she owned it, which, given her family's connections, she probably did. Oh, Carla breathed, her face going pale beneath her carefully applied makeup. Evan looked like he'd seen a ghost. What is she doing here? I invited her, I said cheerfully. Thought it would be nice for you two to attend together. You know, show a united front. Tina's eyes found us across the room, and she started walking over with the kind of purposeful stride that suggested she had questions that needed answering. Several heads turned to watch her progress. Tina Morrison commanded attention without trying. Evan, she said when she reached us, her voice cool and controlled. What a surprise to see you here. Tina, I didn't know you were coming. Clearly. Her gaze shifted to Carla, taking in every detail of the red dress, the diamond earrings, the way my wife was standing just a little too close to her husband. And you must be Carla. I've heard so much about you. The lie was delivered with perfect social grace, but I caught the edge underneath. Tina suspected something, had probably suspected for weeks. She just hadn't known what, or with whom, until now. Mrs. Morrison, it's such a pleasure to meet you, Carla said, extending her hand. Evan speaks of you constantly. Does he? Tina's smile could have cut glass. How strange. He barely mentions work at home. I had no idea he was spending so much time with colleagues. The word colleagues carried enough malice to bring down a horse. I decided it was time to light the fuse. Tina, I have to say, you're even more beautiful than your photos. Evan showed us pictures from your vacation last month, the one to Martha's Vineyard. Carla was so envious. Weren't you, honey? Carla's eyes widened in panic. We hadn't seen any vacation photos. But more importantly, I was betting that Evan and Tina hadn't taken any vacation together recently. Martha's Vineyard? Tina's voice was dangerously quiet. Evan, when exactly did we go to Martha's Vineyard? Evan opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. For a man who made his living convincing people to invest their money based on his recommendations, he was remarkably bad at thinking on his feet. I think there might be some confusion. Oh, I'm sure there is. Tina turned back to me, her smile razor-sharp. Mr. Sullivan, was it? Perhaps you could help clear things up? When exactly did my husband show you these photos? I pretended to think about it. Let's see. It was after one of their late meetings. Carla came home around 11, and she mentioned how Evan had been showing everyone pictures of your beautiful vacation home. 11 p.m.? Tina's eyebrows rose. That is late for a business meeting. Well, you know how it is with important clients, I said. Sometimes you have to go the extra mile. Speaking of which, Carla, didn't you mention that you and Evan had another late meeting scheduled for tomorrow night? I was improvising now, but the look of pure terror on Carla's face told me I'd hit close to something real. No, I don't think... The Marriott downtown, I continued, pulling the detail from the text messages I'd found. Room 412, wasn't it? You said the client preferred to meet in a more private setting. The silence that followed was deafening. Around us, the party continued, laughter, clinking glasses, the soft jazz quartet playing in the corner. But our little group had become an island of tension in the middle of the celebration. Tina looked at her husband with the kind of cold fury that only comes from confirmed suspicion. Evan looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. And Carla looked at me with something I'd never seen before in 8 years of marriage. Not anger, not hurt, not even fear. Hatred. Pure, undiluted hatred. Danny, she said, her voice steady despite the storm in her eyes. I think you might be confused about some details. Am I? I pulled out my phone, made a show of checking my calendar. No, I'm pretty sure it's tomorrow night. You wrote it down on the kitchen calendar. Late meeting with E. Marriott. I remember because I was planning to order pizza and watch the game. Tina's composure finally cracked. Evan, what is he talking about? Tina, I can explain. Can you? Because it sounds like my husband has been having very intimate business meetings with Mrs. Sullivan here, and somehow failed to mention them to me. The conversation was starting to attract attention. Sarah Chen had stopped talking to her companion and was openly staring. A few other coworkers were drifting closer, sensing drama. Perfect. Look, I said, raising my hands in a gesture of peace, I don't want to cause any problems. I'm sure it's all perfectly innocent. Business is business, right? Even if it does require private hotel rooms and late-night meetings. That did it. Tina's careful social mask shattered completely. You bastard, she hissed at Evan, her voice carrying across the ballroom. You lying, cheating bastard. And then she slapped him. The sound echoed through the room like a gunshot. Conversation stopped. The jazz quartet missed a note. Even Mr. Morrison looked up from his circle of admirers. Evan stumbled backward, his hand pressed to his reddening cheek, looking around wildly at the sea of staring faces. Tina, please, not here. Not here? Her voice rose to a near shout. Where then, Evan? In your private hotel room? With your business colleague? She turned to Carla, who was standing frozen like a deer in headlights. How long? I don't know what you mean. How long have you been involved with my husband? The question hung in the air like a toxic cloud. I could see phones coming out, people starting to record. This was going to be all over social media within the hour. Carla's career was about to become a very public train wreck, and I was enjoying every second of it. The aftermath of Tina's public meltdown was everything I'd hoped for and more. Within minutes, half the party was clustered around us like rubberneckers at a car accident, while the other half pretended to mind their own business while obviously straining to hear every word. Mr. Morrison himself pushed through the crowd, his face a mask of professional concern mixed with barely contained fury. Having his company's Christmas party turn into a soap opera wasn't exactly great for the firm's reputation. Perhaps we should take this conversation somewhere more private, he suggested, his voice carrying the kind of authority that made junior executives jump to attention. Oh, I think we're well past privacy, Tina said, her voice still carrying across the ballroom. She'd moved beyond anger into something colder and more dangerous. Apparently my husband has been conducting very public business with Mrs. Sullivan here. I think the whole company should know about their collaboration. Carla finally found her voice. Mrs. Morrison, I think you're misunderstanding the situation. Evan and I work together on several accounts. Our meetings are purely professional. Room 412 at the Marriott is professional? I've never been to any hotel room with your husband. The lie came out smooth and confident, delivered with the same conviction Carla used when pitching clients. For a moment, I almost believed her myself, but I had the text messages. Honey, I said gently, pulling out the cracked phone I'd been carrying in my jacket pocket. Maybe you forgot about this. I'd spent the last 3 weeks taking screenshots of everything, backing up the evidence, making sure I had a complete record of their affair. but nothing beat the impact of the actual device, with its spiderweb screen and incriminating message history. Carla's eyes went wide when she saw it. "Where did you get that?" "Your purse, 3 weeks ago." I scrolled through the messages, making sure everyone could see the screen. "Should I read some of these out loud, or would you prefer to explain them yourself?" The crowd pressed closer. I could see Sarah Chen holding up her phone, definitely recording. This was going to be viral by morning. "Danny, please," Carla whispered, her professional composure finally cracking. "Not like this." "Not like what? Not publicly? Not in front of your coworkers and friends?" I looked around at the assembled faces, some shocked, some fascinated, some clearly enjoying the drama. "These are the people you chose over me, Carla. Every late night, every weekend meeting, every lie you told to cover up your affair, you chose them over our marriage. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think." I found one of the more explicit messages and held up the phone. "Should I read this one? The one where you describe what you want to do to him? Or maybe this one, where you talk about how boring your husband is in bed?" That last part was a lie. None of the messages mentioned me specifically. But the way Carla flinched told everyone watching that I'd hit close to home. Evan, meanwhile, was trying to salvage what was left of his dignity. "Look, everyone, this is a private matter between our families. There's no need to—" "Private?" Tina laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "You want privacy now, after months of sneaking around behind my back, after lying to my face every single day?" She turned to address the crowd directly, her voice carrying the kind of authority that came from a lifetime of social prominence. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you all to meet my husband's mistress, Carla Sullivan, Senior Account Executive, specializing in servicing clients in hotel rooms." The crowd murmured, a sound like distant thunder. I could see Mr. Morrison's face growing redder by the second. Several of the junior executives were openly gaping. This was the kind of scandal that would be talked about for years. "That's enough," Morrison finally said, his voice cutting through the noise. "Security, please escort these people out." "Which people?" I asked innocently. "The cheating employees or the wronged spouses who exposed them?" Morrison's eyes narrowed. He was smart enough to realize that throwing out the victims while protecting the adulterers would look terrible, especially with half the party recording everything. "Everyone involved in this situation. We'll sort this out on Monday." 2 security guards appeared, guys I actually knew from my work installing their camera systems. They looked uncomfortable with the whole situation, probably because they recognized me and knew I wasn't the troublemaker here. "Mr. Sullivan," one of them said quietly, "we need to ask you to leave." "Of course." I pocketed the phone and straightened my tie. "Just let me say goodbye to my wife." I turned to Carla, who was standing there looking like her world had just collapsed around her, which, to be fair, it had. "I'll be staying at my sister's place," I told her, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You can stay at the house until we figure out the divorce details, or maybe Evan has room for you at his place. Oh, wait, he's married too, isn't he?" Carla's face went white. "Danny, please, we need to talk." "We should have talked 3 months ago when you started seeing him. We should have talked when you lied to my face every single day. But now?" I glanced around at the crowd of her coworkers, her friends, her professional network, all of them looking at her like she was something they'd stepped on. "Now I think everyone knows everything they need to know about you." I walked toward the exit, nodding politely to the security guards. Behind me, I could hear Tina's voice rising again as she continued her very public destruction of her husband's reputation. The parking garage was quiet after the chaos of the ballroom. I found my truck, a 10-year-old Ford that looked shabby next to all the BMWs and Mercedes, and sat in the driver's seat for a moment, letting the adrenaline fade. My phone buzzed with a text message. Kara, my sister. "How did it go?" I typed back. "Better than expected. You still have that couch available?" "Always. Come over whenever you're ready." Kara lived in a small apartment in the Riverside district, not far from where we'd grown up. She worked for the city records office, a job that paid decent money and came with excellent benefits for digging up information on people. She'd been suspicious of Carla from the beginning, claiming that anyone who tried that hard to reinvent themselves was probably hiding something. Turned out she was right. I was about to start the truck when I heard footsteps echoing through the garage. Evan appeared, walking quickly toward a silver Porsche parked in the executive section. His face was still red from Tina's slap, and his perfect hair was disheveled. He saw me watching and changed direction, walking over to my truck with the kind of aggressive stride that suggested he was looking for a fight. "You son of a bastard," he said when he reached my window. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" I rolled down the window and smiled. I've exposed a cheating asshole and his lying mistress. Pretty good night's work, if I do say so. You've destroyed 2 marriages over nothing. Nothing. I pulled out the phone again. You want me to read some of these messages? Because I've got 3 months' worth of evidence that says your relationship with my wife was a lot more than nothing. Evan's face darkened. You had no right to go through her private communications. She's my wife, and it was her old phone, sitting in her purse in our house. I had every right. You could have handled this privately. Talked to us, worked something out? Worked something out? I laughed. Like what? Shared custody? Alternate weekends? Maybe I could have you over for dinner on Sundays so you could be with my wife in my own bed? He stepped closer to the truck, his hands clenched into fists. You think you're so clever, don't you? The wronged husband getting his revenge. But you have no idea what you've cost us. Enlighten me. Carla was up for a promotion, senior partner track. This could destroy her career. Good. And Tina. Tina's family has connections throughout the city. Social connections, business connections. When this gets out, people will know exactly what kind of man you are, and what kind of woman she is. I started the truck's engine. Seems fair to me? Evan grabbed the window frame, leaning in close. This isn't over. Yeah, it is. I put the truck in reverse. But hey, look on the bright side. Now you and Carla can be together without all that sneaking around, assuming your wives don't take you for everything you're worth in the divorces. I backed out of the parking space, leaving Evan standing there in his expensive suit, looking like everything he was, a cheating coward who'd been caught and exposed. The drive to Kara's apartment took me through the old neighborhood, past the house where we'd grown up, past the corner store where I'd bought candy with pocket change, past the elementary school where I'd learned that the world wasn't fair, but you could still choose how to respond to that unfairness. I'd chosen revenge, and it felt better than I'd expected. Kara was waiting for me with a beer and a knowing smile. So, how many people saw the show? About 50, plus however many are watching the videos by now. Videos? I showed her the screenshots I'd taken of Sarah Chen and others recording the confrontation. This is going to be all over the company by Monday, probably all over social media by tomorrow. Kara whistled low. Remind me never to piss you off. Just don't cheat on me and we'll be fine. She handed me the beer and settled onto the couch beside me. So what's the plan now? Divorce lawyer? Splitting assets? Already handled. I moved our joint savings to a separate account yesterday. Carla doesn't have access. Is that legal? It's our money. I'm not stealing it, just protecting it until we can divide things properly. I took a long drink of beer. Besides, I have a feeling she's going to need a good lawyer, and those don't come cheap. What do you mean? I pulled out my phone and showed her another screenshot. Not from the text messages, but from a financial app I'd installed on our home computer. I've been tracking her spending for the past month. Hotel rooms, expensive dinners, jewelry I've never seen her wear. She's been using our credit cards to finance her affair. Kara studied the screen. Jesus, Danny. She spent $800 at Victoria's Secret last week. Lingerie for her boyfriend, paid for with my money. I leaned back against the couch cushions. But that's not the best part. There's more? Remember how I told you she's been working late on the Henderson account? I did some research. Henderson Industries terminated their contract with Morrison & Associates 2 months ago. Kara's eyes widened. So what's she been doing during all those late nights? Exactly what you think, but she's been lying to her boss about it, claiming she's still working on active accounts. That's fraud, Kara. She's been billing the company for personal time. Are you going to report her? I smiled. I'm going to do something better. I'm going to let her destroy herself. My phone buzzed with another text message. This one was from Carla. Danny, please come home. We need to talk about this like adults. I showed it to Kara, who snorted with laughter. Like adults? She's been lying and cheating for months, but now she wants to be mature about it? I typed back, we can talk through lawyers. Her response came immediately. Don't do this. Don't throw away 8 years over a mistake. A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk. An affair is a choice. You made yours. I love you, Danny. I made a terrible mistake, but I love you. I stared at the message for a long moment, feeling something twist in my chest. For just a second, I could almost believe her, almost imagine that we could work through this, go to counseling, rebuild what we'd had. Then I remembered the text messages I'd read, the things she'd said about me, about our marriage, about how much better Evan was in bed, the way she'd looked at me tonight, not with love or regret, but with pure hatred for exposing her lies. If you loved me, you wouldn't have been with him. I turned off the phone and handed it to Kara. Hide this somewhere. I don't want to hear from her tonight. What about tomorrow? Tomorrow, the real fun begins. Monday morning came with a text from my boss, Pete, asking if I could take on some extra jobs this week. Word was already spreading through the city's small business network. Morrison and Associates was looking for a new security contractor after some kind of incident at their Christmas party. I accepted the jobs and spent the morning installing cameras at a small law firm downtown, trying not to smile too much as I worked. By lunch, I had 3 more calls about security installations, all from companies that had heard Morrison and Associates was having personnel issues. Nothing spreads faster than scandal in a small professional community. I was finishing up the law firm job when Sarah Chen called me. I almost didn't answer. Sarah was one of Carla's closest friends at work, part of the tight group of ambitious women who went out for drinks after work and spent their weekends at yoga classes and wine tastings. "Danny, it's Sarah, from Morrison and Associates." "Hi, Sarah. How are you doing?" There was a pause. Well, honestly, I'm calling because I wanted to apologize for what happened Friday night." "You don't need to apologize. You didn't do anything wrong." "I recorded it. The whole thing. I posted it on Instagram before I really thought about what I was doing, and now..." She sighed. "It's everywhere, Danny. TikTok, Twitter, Facebook. Someone even made a meme out of it." I sat down on the law firm's front steps, suddenly very interested in this conversation. "A meme?" It's a picture of Tina slapping Evan with the caption, "When you find out your husband's late meetings aren't really meetings." It has like 50,000 shares already. 50,000. Jesus. "How's Carla handling it?" Another pause, longer this time. "She didn't come in today. Mr. Morrison called an all-hands meeting this morning and announced that she's taking a leave of absence pending an internal review." Internal review of what? "Her billing practices. Apparently someone sent HR a detailed breakdown of her timesheets for the past 3 months, cross-referenced with client records. It looks like she's been charging the company for personal time." Someone? Right. I'd spent Sunday afternoon putting together a comprehensive report on Carla's fraudulent billing, complete with credit card receipts showing her hotel visits during hours she'd claimed to be working on terminated accounts. I'd sent it anonymously to Morrison's HR department, along with copies to the company's main clients. "That's terrible," I said, trying to sound appropriately concerned. "Danny, I have to ask, did you send that information to HR?" "Why would you think that?" "Because it was very detailed, very thorough, the kind of thing someone would put together if they were really angry and wanted to cause maximum damage." I stood up and walked to my truck. "Sarah, my wife has been lying to me for months. She's been using our money to fund an affair with a married man. She's been billing her company for personal time while she spends it with her boyfriend in hotel rooms. If someone sent evidence of that to her employer, good for them." "So you did send it?" "I didn't say that." "You didn't deny it either." I climbed into the truck and started the engine. "Sarah, let me ask you something. How long have you known about the affair?" Silence. "Because I'm betting it wasn't a secret. I'm betting you and the rest of her friends knew exactly what was going on, and none of you said a word to me." "Danny, it wasn't our place. It wasn't your place to tell me my wife was cheating, but it is your place to call and lecture me about exposing her fraud." "I'm not lecturing you. I'm worried about her. She's not answering her phone. Jennifer went by the house yesterday and said it looked like no one was home." Jennifer, another member of Carla's inner circle, a marketing director who lived in the same upscale neighborhood we did. "She's probably staying with Evan. They don't have to sneak around anymore." "Evan's not answering his phone either, and Tina filed for divorce this morning. It was in the legal notices section of the paper." That was fast. Tina wasn't wasting any time cutting her losses. "Look, Sarah, I appreciate the call, but I'm not responsible for cleaning up Carla's mess. She made her choices. Now she gets to live with the consequences." I hung up and sat in the truck for a moment, thinking. Carla wasn't at the house, wasn't answering her phone, and her friends were worried. Either she was hiding out somewhere, or she was planning something. I called Kara. "Hey, it's me. Can you do me a favor?" "Sure. What do you need?" "Can you check the city records and see if Carla's filed any restraining orders or domestic violence complaints?" "Jesus, Danny, you think she'd do that?" "I think she's desperate. Her career is over, her affair is public knowledge, and she's about to lose half of everything in a divorce. Desperate people do desperate things." "Give me an hour." While I waited for Kara to get back to me, I drove to the house to pick up more of my clothes. I'd been living out of a duffel bag for 3 days, and I needed to get my affairs in order if this was going to turn into a legal battle. The house looked normal from the outside, a modest 2-story colonial in a middle-class neighborhood. Nothing fancy but well-maintained. Carla had wanted to move somewhere more upscale, but I'd insisted we stay within our means. Now I was glad we had. It would be easier to sell and split the proceeds. I used my key to let myself in, expecting to find the place empty. Instead, I found chaos. The living room looked like a tornado had hit it. Furniture was overturned, picture frames were smashed, books and DVDs were scattered across the floor. The kitchen was worse. Cabinet doors hanging open, dishes broken in the sink, what looked like a full bottle of wine splattered across the white walls. "Carla," I called out, not really expecting an answer. The silence that came back was somehow more unsettling than noise would have been. I walked upstairs carefully, stepping over broken glass and scattered papers. Our bedroom had been torn apart. Clothes pulled from closets, dresser drawers dumped out, the mattress askew on its frame. The bathroom mirror was cracked, with what looked like dried stains on the shards. But no Carla. I pulled out my phone to call the police, then stopped. If I reported a break-in, and it turned out Carla had done this herself in some kind of emotional breakdown, it would just complicate things. And if someone else had done it, my phone rang. Kara. "Danny, we have a problem." "What kind of problem?" "She filed a restraining order this morning, emergency protection order, claiming you threatened her with physical violence Friday night. The judge granted a temporary order pending a hearing next week." I sat down hard on the bed, looking around at the destruction. "Kara, I'm at the house right now. The place has been trashed. I mean, completely destroyed. Are you sure you should be there? If there's a restraining order?" "The order hasn't been served yet. I haven't been notified." I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the street. But someone's been here. Either Carla did this herself, or... A car door slammed outside. I looked down to see a police cruiser parked in my driveway, 2 officers getting out. "Kara, I have to go. The cops are here." "Danny, don't say anything without a lawyer." "I know." I hung up and walked downstairs, stepping carefully around the broken glass. The front door was still open from when I'd entered, so I stood in the doorway with my hands visible, waiting for the officers to approach. "Mr. Sullivan?" The older of the 2 cops was a sergeant, gray-haired and tired-looking. "I'm Sergeant Martinez. We need to talk to you about a domestic violence complaint." "Of course. But first I need to report a break-in. Someone trashed my house." Martinez looked past me into the living room, taking in the destruction. "When did this happen?" "I don't know. I've been staying at my sister's place since Friday. I came by today to pick up some clothes and found it like this." The younger officer, whose nameplate read Torres, was already taking pictures with his phone. "Sir, we're going to need you to step outside while we process the scene." "Process the scene? This is my house." "Mr. Sullivan," Martinez said patiently, "your wife filed a restraining order this morning, claiming you threatened her with violence. Now we find your house destroyed. You can see how this looks." I could indeed see how it looked. It looked like I'd come home in a rage and destroyed everything, possibly while looking for Carla. It looked like exactly the kind of thing an abusive husband might do after being publicly humiliated. It looked like Carla had planned this very carefully. "Sergeant, I didn't do this. I've been at work all morning. I can give you the names and numbers of 3 different clients who can verify my whereabouts." "We'll need those names." Martinez was making notes in a small notebook. "But first, we need to serve you with this restraining order and ask you to leave the premises." He handed me a folded paper. I read through it quickly, my anger building with every line. According to the document, I had threatened harm to both Carla and Evan on Friday night. I had exhibited violent and erratic behavior and had damaged personal property belonging to the complainant. All lies. Every single word. "This is bullshit," I said, crumpling the paper. "I never threatened anyone. There were 50 people at that party who can verify that." "Mr. Sullivan, I'm going to need you to calm down." "I am calm. I'm also being framed by my cheating wife." Torres looked up from his photography. "Sir, did you say your wife was cheating?" "For 3 months, with a married man. I have proof. Text messages, credit card receipts, hotel records. That's what Friday night was about. I exposed their affair at a company party." Martinez and Torres exchanged a look. "Mr. Sullivan, we're going to need you to come down to the station and give a statement, and we're going to need those client contacts to verify your alibi for today." "Am I under arrest?" "Not at this time, but you are required to stay at least 500 feet away from your wife and this residence until the restraining order hearing." I looked back at my destroyed house, at 8 years of marriage reduced to broken glass and scattered belongings. Carla had played this perfectly. She'd made herself look like the victim while destroying any evidence I might have used against her in divorce proceedings. But she'd made one mistake. She'd underestimated how far I was willing to go for revenge. "Officers, I'll cooperate fully with your investigation, but I want to file charges against my wife for destruction of property, fraud, and filing a false police report." Martinez sighed. "Mr. Sullivan, that's going to be difficult to prove." "No, it's not." I pulled out my phone and opened the photo app. Because I've been documenting everything. Every lie, every fraudulent expense, every piece of evidence of her affair. And I've got witnesses who can testify that she's been planning something like this. I scrolled through the screenshots of text messages, the financial records, the timeline I'd been building for weeks. She didn't just cheat on me, officers. She's been systematically defrauding her employer, using our joint credit cards for personal expenses, and now she's filing false police reports to cover it up. Torres was looking at my phone screen with interest. "Sir, how long have you been collecting this information?" 3 weeks, ever since I found out about the affair." "And you didn't confront your wife about it?" I smiled grimly. "Oh, I confronted her. Very publicly. That's what Friday night was about. And now she's trying to make me look like the bad guy." Martinez closed his notebook. "Mr. Sullivan, this is clearly a complex domestic situation. We're going to need detailed statements from everyone involved, and we're going to need to verify all of this evidence. I understand, but I want it on record that I'm the victim here, not her. We'll investigate all the claims thoroughly." I looked back at the house one more time, then walked to my truck. "Officers, one more thing. When you do find my wife, ask her where she was last night, because I'm betting she doesn't have an alibi for when this place was destroyed." As I drove away, I could see Martinez and Torres in my rearview mirror, standing in front of my ruined house, talking quietly between themselves. Carla thought she was clever. She thought she could play the victim and make me look like the villain. But she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life. She'd started a war with someone who had nothing left to lose. The police station interview took 3 hours. I gave them everything: the complete timeline of Carla's affair, copies of all the evidence I'd collected, contact information for my alibis, and a detailed breakdown of why her restraining order was fraudulent. Detective Lisa Rodriguez, no relation to anyone I knew, despite my earlier concerns about names, was handling the case. She was thorough, professional, and clearly skeptical of both sides of the story. "Mr. Sullivan, I have to ask, why didn't you confront your wife privately when you first discovered the affair?" "Because I was angry. Because I wanted her to face consequences for what she'd done. Because I was tired of being the only honest person in my marriage." "So you planned the public confrontation at the Christmas party?" "I planned to expose the truth. What happened after that was their choice." Rodriguez made a note. "And you maintain that you never threatened anyone with violence?" "Never. There were 50 witnesses to that conversation. If I'd threatened anyone, don't you think someone would have called security immediately?" "Yet your wife claims you said you would make them pay for what they'd done." I thought back to Friday night, trying to remember my exact words. I might have said something about consequences, but consequences and threats are different things. "Are they?" I leaned forward in my chair. "Detective, let me ask you something. If you caught your spouse cheating, and they'd been lying to you for months, using your money to finance their affair, what would you do?" "I'd probably want revenge too," she admitted, "but I wouldn't plan it out in advance, and I wouldn't involve innocent bystanders." "Innocent bystanders? You mean like me? Like Evan's wife?" "We were the innocent bystanders, Detective. Carla and Evan were the ones who chose to make their affair everyone else's problem." Rodriguez closed her notebook. "Mr. Sullivan, I'm going to be honest with you. Your wife's story has some holes in it. The timeline doesn't quite work, and some of her claims about Friday night don't match what other witnesses have told us." "Other witnesses?" "We've spoken to several people who were at the party. Their version of events is different from what your wife described in her complaint." I felt a surge of hope. "Different how?" "They describe you as calm, controlled, even polite. They say you never raised your voice or made any threatening gestures. One witness said you seemed almost amused by the whole situation." That was probably Sarah Chen. For all her faults, Sarah was observant. "So what happens now?" "We continue investigating. We'll need to interview your wife when we can locate her, and we'll need to verify your alibi for yesterday. But Mr. Sullivan," she leaned back in her chair, "I'd be very careful about any contact with your wife, even indirect contact. Restraining orders work both ways. If she can prove you're trying to harass or intimidate her, it won't matter if her original complaint was false." "Understood." "And if you're planning any more public confrontations—" "I'm not planning anything, Detective. I'm just going to let the truth speak for itself." Which was technically accurate. I wasn't planning anything illegal or violent, but I definitely had some ideas about how to make sure the truth got maximum exposure. I left the police station and drove to Kara's apartment, my mind already working on the next phase of my campaign. Carla had escalated things by involving the police and filing false charges. That meant I could escalate too, without looking like the aggressor. Kara was waiting with Chinese takeout and a laptop. How did it go? Better than expected. The detective thinks Carla's story has holes in it. I sat down at her kitchen table and opened one of the containers. What did you find out about the restraining order? It's temporary, pending a hearing next Monday. But Danny, there's something else. Something you need to see. She turned the laptop toward me. On the screen was a Facebook post from Jennifer, Carla's friend from work. The post was a long, emotional defense of Carla, describing her as a victim of domestic abuse who was too scared to come forward until now. The post had dozens of comments, mostly from other women expressing support and outrage. Several people had shared it, spreading Jennifer's version of events to hundreds of other people. Jesus, I muttered, scrolling through the comments. She's really going all in on this victim narrative. It gets worse. Kara clicked on another tab, showing me a GoFundMe page titled Help Carla Escape Domestic Abuse. The page featured a photo of Carla looking sad and vulnerable, with a description that painted me as an abusive monster who had threatened harm to her and her coworkers after discovering her relationship with Evan. The page had already raised over $3,000. A friendship? I laughed bitterly. They're calling a 3-month affair a friendship? Look at the donors, Kara said. I scrolled through the list. Sarah Chen had donated $50. Jennifer had donated $100. Even some people I didn't recognize, probably Carla's extended network of professional contacts, had contributed. She's weaponizing social media, I realized, making herself look like the victim while raising money to fight me in court. What are you going to do? I stared at the screen for a long moment, thinking. Carla was playing the victim card perfectly, using the current cultural climate around domestic violence to her advantage. Anyone who challenged her story would look like they were attacking an abuse victim, but she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd forgotten that I had proof of everything. Kara, how good are you with video editing? Pretty good. Why? I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through the screenshots and photos I'd collected over the past few weeks. Because we're going to tell the real story, all of it, with documentation. Over the next 4 hours, we put together a comprehensive video timeline of Carla's affair. Screenshots of text messages, photos of credit card receipts, records of her fraudulent billing at work, even audio recordings I'd made of her lying to my face about where she'd been. I'd been more thorough than I'd realized. Every lie, every deception, every piece of evidence was time-stamped and documented. This is intense, Kara said as we reviewed the final product. You sure you want to put this online? Once it's out there, you can't take it back. She put her version online first. I'm just providing context. Danny, this could destroy her completely. Her career, her reputation, her relationships. Good. She destroyed our marriage. She destroyed 8 years of trust. She's trying to destroy me with false accusations. I saved the video file to a USB drive. Fair is fair. What about Evan? This will hurt him too. Even better, he's as guilty as she is. Kara was quiet for a moment. You know, when this started, I thought you just wanted to expose them and move on. But this feels like something else. This feels like you want to completely destroy them. She was right, and we both knew it. I'd moved beyond wanting justice or even revenge. I wanted total annihilation. I wanted Carla and Evan to lose everything, the way I'd lost everything. Maybe I do, I admitted. Is that wrong? I don't know, but it's scary. You're not the same person you were a week ago. She was right about that, too. The Danny Sullivan who'd installed security systems and went to office parties and believed in his marriage was gone. In his place was someone harder, colder, more calculating, someone who planned elaborate revenge schemes and documented every move for maximum impact, someone who was starting to enjoy the destruction he was causing. Upload the video, I told her, to YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, everywhere. Make sure it's searchable under Carla's name and Morrison and Associates. Danny, upload it, Kara. She wants to play victim. Let's see how that works when everyone knows the truth. Kara sighed, but started clicking through the upload process. What about the restraining order? Won't this violate it? I'm not contacting her directly. I'm not threatening her. I'm just sharing factual information about public events. I smiled grimly. Besides, she started the social media war. I'm just finishing it. The video went live at 11 p.m. on Tuesday night. By Wednesday morning, it had over 10,000 views and had been shared across multiple platforms. By Wednesday afternoon, it had been picked up by several local news outlets as a story about social media and modern infidelity. By Wednesday evening, Morrison and Associates had issued a statement announcing that they were conducting a thorough review of recent allegations involving current and former employees. And by Thursday morning, Carla's GoFundMe page had been taken down for violating the platform's policies against fraudulent fundraising. The war was far from over. But I was winning. Thursday brought 3 developments that changed everything. First, Detective Rodriguez called to tell me that they'd located Carla. She was staying at a women's shelter downtown, claiming to be afraid for her life. The detective's tone suggested she wasn't entirely buying the story, especially after reviewing my video evidence, but the shelter placement made things complicated. Mr. Sullivan, even if we determine that the original restraining order was filed under false pretenses, the fact that your wife is now in protective custody means we have to take any threats against her very seriously. I haven't made any threats. Your video has been viewed over 50,000 times. Some of the comments are concerning. I hadn't thought about that. While I'd been focused on exposing Carla's lies, other people had been using my evidence to launch their own attacks against her. Some of the comments on the video were genuinely disturbing, people talking about what they'd like to do to cheating women like her, making graphic threats about violence and harm. Detective, I can't control what other people say online. No, but you can control what content you put out there. And right now, your video is being used as justification for some very ugly harassment. The second development came from my lawyer, Tom Bradley, a guy I'd known since high school who'd built a decent family law practice in the downtown area. Danny, we have a problem. Carla's attorney is claiming that your video constitutes stalking and harassment under the state's cyber-stalking laws. They're asking for an expanded restraining order that would prevent you from posting anything about her online. Can they do that? Maybe. The law is still evolving when it comes to social media and domestic disputes, but the fact that she's in a women's shelter makes her look sympathetic, and the fact that your video has generated so much negative attention makes you look vindictive. I am vindictive. She cheated on me and then tried to frame me for domestic violence. I know, and we can prove that, but we need to be smart about how we handle this. If you come across as obsessed or dangerous, it won't matter how much evidence you have. The third development was the most interesting. Sarah Chen called me around noon, sounding nervous and upset. Danny, I need to talk to you, in person. Can you meet me somewhere? I don't think that's a good idea, Sarah. I'm sure Carla wouldn't want you talking to me. That's just it. I'm not sure I can keep supporting her story, not after seeing your video. We met at a coffee shop in neutral territory, away from both Morrison and Associates and my neighborhood. Sarah looked tired, stressed, like she hadn't been sleeping well. I owe you an apology, she said without preamble. We all knew about the affair. Not the details, but we knew something was going on between Carla and Evan. How long? 2 months, maybe 3. Carla started acting different, happier, more secretive. She'd get text messages during meetings and smile this little smile. And then there were the clothes. Clothes? New lingerie, expensive stuff. She'd show us pictures when we went shopping, talking about how she was spicing things up in her marriage. But the things she was buying? Sarah shook her head. They weren't for a husband she'd been with for 8 years. They were for someone new. I felt that familiar twist of anger in my chest. Did you ask her about it? Jennifer did once. Carla just laughed and said she was feeling more confident about herself. But we all knew. And none of you said anything to me? Sarah looked down at her coffee cup. We talked about it, but Carla said you two were having problems, that you were distant and cold. She made it sound like the marriage was already over. So you decided it was okay for her to cheat? No. We thought maybe she was just getting some attention she wasn't getting at home. We didn't think it would go this far. I leaned back in my chair, studying Sarah's face. She seemed genuinely upset, but I wasn't sure if it was guilt or just fear of being associated with the scandal. Why are you telling me this now? Because of what happened after the party. The way she immediately went to the police, the restraining order, the GoFundMe page. Sarah met my eyes. That's not the behavior of someone who made a mistake. That's the behavior of someone who planned this. Planned what? The whole victim narrative. Danny, she had that restraining order ready to file on Monday morning. That means she wrote it over the weekend before you'd even had a chance to contact her. She was already planning to accuse you of domestic violence. That was interesting, and potentially useful. Sarah, would you be willing to testify about that? About the timeline, about how quickly she filed the order? I don't know. I don't want to get involved in a legal battle. You're already involved. You donated to her GoFundMe page. You shared Jennifer's Facebook post defending her. You're part of her support network. Sarah winced. I donated before I saw your video, before I realized how much evidence you had. And now? Now I think she's been lying to all of us. About the affair, about you, about everything. I pulled out my phone and opened the voice recorder app. Sarah, I want you to repeat what you just told me. About the timeline, about Carla planning the restraining order, about how you all knew about the affair. Danny, I can't. Yes, you can. Because if you don't, you're going to be complicit in her lies. And when this all comes out in court, and it will come out, you're going to look like either a fool or an accomplice. Sarah stared at the phone for a long moment, then started talking. By Friday morning, I had recorded statements from 3 of Carla's closest friends, all admitting that they'd known about the affair and that Carla's victim narrative didn't match what they'd witnessed. I also had documentation showing that she'd filed the restraining order suspiciously quickly, and evidence that she'd been planning some kind of legal action even before our confrontation at the party. But the most damaging evidence came from an unexpected source. Evan. He called me Friday afternoon, sounding desperate and panicked. Sullivan, we need to talk. I don't think that's a good idea, Evan. I'm sure your lawyer wouldn't approve. My lawyer is the least of my problems right now. Tina's divorce attorney is destroying me. She's going after everything, the house, the business, even my retirement accounts. And now Morrison and Associates is talking about terminating my consulting contract. Sounds like you're facing consequences for your actions. How terrible. Look, I know you hate me. I know you want to see me suffer. But Carla is out of control. The things she's saying, the lies she's telling, she's going to destroy both of us. That got my attention. What do you mean? She's claiming that I coerced her into the affair, that I threatened her job if she didn't sleep with me. She's trying to make herself look like a victim of misconduct instead of a willing participant. I almost laughed. And you're surprised by this? Danny, she's got recordings, audio recordings of our conversations, taken without my knowledge. She's been planning this for weeks, maybe months. She's been setting me up to take the fall for everything. Why should I care? Because she's setting you up too. Those recordings, some of them are conversations about you, about your marriage, about how she could get rid of you and take everything in a divorce. I felt a chill run down my spine. What kind of conversations? Meet me tonight. Riverside Park, by the old playground. I'll bring copies of everything I have. Evan, Danny, I know you think I'm the villain here, and maybe I am. But Carla is something else entirely. She's dangerous. And if we don't stop her, she's going to destroy both of us and walk away with everything. I hung up and sat in my truck for a long time, thinking. Evan could be lying, trying to manipulate me into helping him, but something about his tone, his desperation, felt genuine. And if Carla really had been recording conversations, planning this whole scenario in advance. That changed everything. I called Tom Bradley. Tom, hypothetically, if someone recorded conversations without consent and then used those recordings to file false police reports, what kind of charges could they face? Wire fraud, potentially. Filing false reports. Depending on the content of the recordings, maybe extortion or blackmail. Tom paused. Danny, what's going on? I'm not sure yet, but I think Carla might have been planning this whole thing from the beginning. Planning what? All of it. The affair, the public confrontation, the restraining order, the victim narrative. I think she's been manipulating everyone. Me, Evan, her friends, even the police. That's a serious accusation. I know, but if I'm right, it means she's not just a cheating wife. She's a criminal. I met Evan at Riverside Park at sunset. The old playground was deserted, with rusted swings and broken seesaws surrounded by overgrown grass. It was the kind of place people went when they didn't want to be found. Evan looked terrible. His perfect hair was disheveled, his expensive clothes wrinkled, his face haggard with stress and exhaustion. He was carrying a manila envelope that he handed to me without a word. Inside were printouts of text messages, transcripts of recorded conversations, and what looked like a detailed timeline of events going back 6 months. She played us both, Evan said quietly. The whole affair was orchestrated. She seduced me, recorded our conversations, documented everything we did together, and she was planning to use it all against us from the very beginning. I read through the documents, my anger building with every page. Carla hadn't just cheated on me, she'd planned the entire destruction of our marriage as part of some elaborate scheme to take everything I had while making herself look like the victim. Why? I asked. Why go through all this instead of just asking for a divorce? Because a divorce would mean splitting assets 50-50. But if she could prove you were abusive, she'd get everything. The house, the savings, probably alimony too. Evan sat down on one of the broken swings. And if she could prove I coerced her into the affair, she'd have grounds to sue Morrison and Associates for misconduct. She'd walk away with millions. Jesus Christ! Danny, I know you have no reason to trust me, but we need to work together on this. She's going to destroy both of us if we don't stop her. I looked at the evidence in my hands, then at Evan's desperate face. 3 weeks ago, I'd wanted nothing more than to see this man suffer for sleeping with my wife. Now I realized he'd been just as manipulated as I had. What do you want me to do? Help me expose her. Really expose her. Not just the affair, but the whole conspiracy. The recordings, the planning, the false accusations, all of it. I thought about it for a long moment. Teaming up with my wife's lover to destroy her completely felt like crossing a line I couldn't come back from. But then I thought about the restraining order, the false accusations, the way she'd tried to make me look like an abuser while she was the one planning everything. Okay, I said finally. Let's burn her down. We spent the next 2 hours going through everything. Carla's recordings, her timeline, her communications with her lawyer and the women's shelter. By the time we were finished, we had enough evidence to prove that she'd orchestrated the entire situation as part of an elaborate fraud scheme. One more thing, Evan said as we prepared to leave. The restraining order hearing is Monday morning. If we're going to do this, it has to be before then. Once she gets a permanent order, it'll be much harder to prove she was lying. What do you have in mind? Evan smiled grimly. Something very public. Something that will make Friday night's party look like a quiet conversation. I'm listening. The Morrison & Associates annual client appreciation dinner is tomorrow night. Black tie event, all the biggest clients in the city, local media coverage. Carla was supposed to be the keynote speaker before all this happened. So what if she still shows up? What if someone tips her off that the event is going forward without her, that they're going to announce her termination publicly, and she decides to crash the party to defend herself? I saw where he was going with this. And what if, when she shows up, someone is there with all the evidence of her fraud? All the recordings, all the planning documents, everything? Exactly. Complete exposure, in front of everyone who matters in this city. I looked at the evidence in my hands, thinking about the nuclear option we were discussing. If we did this, there would be no going back. Carla's life would be over, her career, her reputation, her future, everything. But then I remembered the way she'd looked at me Friday night. Not with love or regret, but with pure hatred. She'd already decided to destroy me. I was just returning the favor. Let's do it, I said.